Welcome to In the Archives. I'm Michael Feinstein here at the Great American Songbook Foundation Archive, so it's appropriately named, and I'm glad that you are with me and with us to experience another glimpse into some of the collections that we have here. A couple of items that lead me to a very important person in my life, an iconic singer named Rosemary Clooney. Rosemary Clooney was my second mom, and she called me her sixth kid. I was always a fan of her singing. There was something about her voice that was very special to me, that went so deeply into my heart that it was personal, as happens for many of us when we hear a piece of music or hear a singer perform something that feels so personal that we feel like we know them. And I think that was one of Rosemary's great gifts, in that she could communicate so individually to all of the people who listened to her sing. And she had a very, very long career, starting in the 1940s when she was in her teens, performing at WLW radio in Cincinnati, then joined the Tony Pastor Band in the mid-1940s, went solo around 1947, and had a tremendous career that led to her being the first female singer on the cover of Time magazine in the early 1950s, when her song "Come On to My House" had become a huge hit. Rosemary had a spectacularly successful career, and we are lucky to have some of her musical arrangements in our archive and some other ephemera. Rosemary was a person who was very facile, and it served her well because she did a lot of television. She had 2 television series throughout the 1950s, and on those programs she had to sing tons and tons of songs and had to learn them quickly, and of course they had to do musical arrangements for all of these songs, and she also had a thriving recording career. So she had a huge library of almost 1,000 musical arrangements. And the sad thing is that in the late 70s, early 1980s, the entire library was trashed. It was destroyed for space when somehow Rosemary wasn't informed of the fact that the library needed to be moved, and there was a miscommunication because she absolutely would have kept her library and moved it someplace else, but she never got the message, and they threw into a dumpster her entire musical legacy. She discovered later that that had happened and was devastated, and it's one of the great heartbreaks when I listen to all these recordings thinking, if only these arrangements still existed. And then an odd thing happened. About 4 months ago, from the time of this recording, there appeared on eBay an offering for some Rosemary Clooney musical arrangements. It was quite extraordinary because the photographs showed arrangements that clearly had come from part of her library. So how these arrangements were saved, I don't know. But we were able to acquire them, and there are about 50 musical arrangements that span a very long period of time in Rosemary's career. And some of them go back to the late 1940s and others go into the 1960s. And I have 2 examples of arrangements. This one is it was created for an album called Clap Hands, Here Comes Rosie, an album she did for RCA, I think around 1959 or early 1960. It was arranged by Bob Thompson, and this is his original pencil manuscript score for the song Aren't You Glad You're You, and all of the original parts that were played by the musicians at the recording session. And this is one of those arrangements that she only recorded once and never performed again. So this went back into her library and was never used again. So this is an example of something that was only used one time by Rosemary. There are other arrangements in this collection that were used frequently, and you can tell by the penciled notes by musicians from live performance or changes where things are crossed out and such. And one of those arrangements is the song You Make Me Feel So Young, arranged for her by Nelson Riddle for her television series in the 1950s. And the thing that's fascinating about it is that thanks to our friend Keith Pollack, who donated some Rosemary Clooney arrangements that he had gathered from other sources, we had part of the original Nelson Riddle arrangement for Rosemary Clooney of You Make Me Feel So Young the band parts, but we didn't have any of the string parts. And in this collection that appeared on eBay, we found the string parts. So we now are able to put those together and create a complete arrangement that was otherwise lost, thanks to the gods smiling on us here at the Foundation and allowing us to restore something that we'll now be able to perform and play for other people. This is an arrangement of the song A Foggy Day in London Town, which was a special song to Rosemary because she was next door neighbors to Ira Gershwin, and that's how I originally met Rosemary Clooney. And so she loved singing and recording Gershwin songs, and Ira Gershwin loved the way that she sang them. And this is one of the first Gershwin songs that she recorded. But this particular arrangement was one that was recorded when Rosemary was appearing in London, I think at the London Palladium. So these are the original parts as copied by a British copyist. And I say a British copyist because the handwriting and the font of the music of the copyists in England is very different and distinctive. And eagle-eyed historians of such things as this can actually determine sometimes the location of where something was copied by the handwriting. So this is the original Foggy Day arrangement, which she recorded and was not released. This record was not released until many, many years later in the CD era. So it's a record that sort of fell through the cracks. And this is the original pencil score, a little bit fragile, but wonderful to see in its neatness, because sometimes you see a score where an arranger just has a flurry of inspiration and they go like this. This stands up against any of the greatest arrangers' works, even though you may not know the work of Angela Morley. And Rosemary did perform this arrangement on television because this says Foggy Day insert for Steve Allen's show. So she did this song, this arrangement, live at least once on the Steve Allen show, for which they had to make some sort of adaptation, and the adaptation parts are here as well. So I didn't even know that Rosemary Clooney appeared on the Steve Allen show until I found this note about it, and then went online and discovered indeed she had appeared on the show. So that's how one piece of history can lead us to discovering about another part of history. So it is with great pride that I'm able to talk about the collection and legacy of Rosemary Clooney, because she is one of the most important singers of the 20th century and will always be a very special part of our archive. Thank you for watching.